Hello, my name's Alex Hill, and this is another video about the Jungian Analyst from San Diego. I made one earlier video about Robert Johnson, and like I said in that video, I had called him to try and arrange some analytical sessions with him, and he said that he couldn't do that, but recommended John Sanford. John Sanford was an Episcopal priest here in San Diego for a number of years. He retired from his post at St. Paul's Cathedral downtown and went into exclusively being a Jungian analyst and Jungian author, as well as he wrote some fiction too. So anyway, Robert gave me Jack's number. John A. Sanford, he went by Jack, at the Journey into Wholeness that he and Robert spoke at. He had everybody calling him Jack. So anyway, I called him, and he answered the phone himself while he was in session, and was noticeably irritated that he had been disturbed. And of course, I called him back later, and he was very nice, and we set up 3 hours worth of sessions in November of 1993. And Robert hadn't said anything about Jack being an author himself, and I didn't realize it until quite by accident. A bookstore owner friend of mine asked me what was going on, and I said that I was going out to see John Sanford in a week and have some analytical sessions with him, and she was like, "John Sanford, are you crazy? Are you kidding? He's my favorite Jungian author." I was like, "Wow, no, I'm not kidding." So I went down to her bookstore and I got 3 of his books and started reading them. And before I'd ever read about, in my favorite book, Healing and Wholeness, in it he talks about pilgrims to see the sanctuary or the temples of the Greek god of healing, Asclepius, Asclepieims, and that before the pilgrim would start on his journey to the Asclepieium, which was usually some distance away, he or she might start experiencing some sort of healing or transformation before they even left, and then also on the journey. And sure enough, when I read his bio, that he was an Episcopal priest, it was a great synchronicity because I had been raised a cradle Episcopalian. I was baptized an Episcopalian when I was, less than a year old. So that got my attention before I'd ever met him, and I went back to my church that I attended when I was in grade school, and it was the first time I'd been back to that church in quite some time, and it was a bit of an epiphany to begin with. So that was the beginning of my unusual experiences with Jack Sanford. And then on the way out, on the flight, I flew out here with my father from Memphis, and I started reading this Healing and Wholeness book, and started reading about the Greek god of healing, Asclepius, who I'd never heard of. Of course, I'd seen the staff of Asclepius. It's still around, and that was quite an experience. Um, he talks about this in Healing and Wholeness, how when we bring up material from the unconscious, it can be overwhelming, as it unites with consciousness. This unconscious material is a powerful thing. Of course, this was from the collective unconscious, but still, it had quite an effect on me. So anyway, he had sent me a layout of his, or a photograph of his office, which had an interesting layout. The waiting room wasn't really a waiting room, it was a bench going along the side of the building in the front. And so you were kind of exposed to the world, what you were doing there. And my father, that first Friday I met Jack, was sitting out there waiting for me. And he had a rather Spartan office. There was not very much to it, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but it came up in the conversation, and he said it was, so that the client wouldn't be distracted. And this is somewhat reminiscent of the Abaton that he talks about in Journeying to Wholeness, or Healing and Wholeness. So anyway, it was 11/11, November the 11th, 1993, that I flew out here, and the next day I had my first hour with him, and I had brought some snakes with me. I was breeding snakes at the time, and there was a snake expo here that weekend, and I thought maybe I could sell some snakes. And I think I was changing hotels. I was in the process of changing hotels when I. So anyway, Jack seemed to like my snakes that I showed him. It was just some baby king snakes, milk snakes. And I think he liked snakes more than Robert did. I know he was an outdoorsman, and he told me about seeing a puff adder shed its skin in the wild in Africa, and I said something about having seen I think I saw a eastern diamondback shed when I was working at the reptile house. Did it in about 5 minutes. But he pointed out that it was different seeing one do it in the wild, and I do agree with him in that. I think he told me about Jung's Gnostic snake ring that he always wore. I'm not sure about that, but it's an interesting fact. And of course, Jung wrote extensively about snake symbolism, Gnosticism, and other snake-related mythological stuff. He insisted that I read Fritz Kunkel. He told me that the books were probably out of print, or maybe I called him when I found that they were out of print. But I had quite a bit of difficulty even finding his selected writings of Fritz Kunkel. But I finally did, and found an interesting oppositorium between the clinging vine, egocentric type, and the turtle. Somebody else explained to me that the turtle was representative of having a problem with not getting enough attention as a child, and that the clinging vine was getting too much attention as a child. And it's an interesting antagonistic duality that you can see in different people. I got Creation Continues also. Found it a bit too fundamentalist Christian, which I never really got too much from Jack. He seemed to use what seemed to me a Socratic dialogue. He would pose questions to you as if he didn't know what he was talking about, but he really did. I, at one point, expressed some ambivalence towards snakes in general, and he asked me, "Well, do you love snakes or do you hate them?" And I said, "Well, it's kind of a little of both." I said, "Don't you have some disdain for snakes?" And he said, No, I have nothing but positive regards for them," which I found unusual because, of course, snakes are one of the main things they symbolize, or one of the most important things they symbolize, is a duality. He also suggested I try some active imagination, and I found this particularly effective. He talks about it in Healing and Wholeness too, how the thing to do is to take a dream, and a dream in which you've got some sort of dialogue going on, and then transfer that dialogue to your active imagination. And I remember I had a dream about a girlfriend who asked me, "How do you spell love?" or something like that. And I said romance. And he thought that was kind of a smart aleck answer, and he said, don't say that, but say something else and see if it doesn't lead to something. It really did. It was a very powerful experience. At Journey into Wholeness a few years later, he was there, but I had heard before the conference that he was not quite with it, and that his lecture at the previous one was not very good, and nobody was buying his tapes or his books or something like that. But at the Journey into Wholeness I went to, my first one, his books were selling, particularly his newest book, which was about the fates, and I believe Eris. But one book wasn't selling, which was, of course, the Healing and Wholeness, which I like so much. And I can't help but think that it's got something to do with him writing about Asclepius. It seems like there is this complex against it. Certainly something's going on, that here we have this symbol that has endured for millennia. He also, in Journey in Healing and Wholeness, talks about John 3:14, where Christ says, just as Moses raised the serpent in the desert, so must the Son of Man be raised up. And that, of course, correlates with Asclepius, serpent on a staff. And so I suspect that's why his books did not sell better, particularly Healing and Wholeness, which was out of print soon after that Journey into Wholeness. And I do remember him lecturing. I believe he was the cornerstone speaker of the conference, but he lectured about the well that I think it's an old well that is out of use, but if you start using it again, it starts producing more and more water. I think that is from his first book, the introduction to his first book, Dreams, God's Forgotten Language. Isn't that a great title for a book? Dreams, God's Forgotten Language. Anyway, that's about all I've got on him. I definitely wrote him after I saw him about trying to find those books by Kunkel, and he gave me some pretty specific advice on how to find them. But after that, I just got word from Robert when I saw him in was it 2002. So anyway, that's it.